Now, cryptids are mysterious entities that have existed through the ages and have been passed down through tales of folklore and legend. Said to inhabit a range of environments, it seems that there is a cryptid for every occasion. From the frozen hills of the Himalayas, where locals call a Bigfoot entity by the name of the Yeti, to plunging marine depths of the frigid waters of Iliamna Lake, which is said to be home to the unidentified entity known in the local dialect as Ganonkadet. Now, of course, we all know about the harrowing tale of the routing of the village of Portlock in Alaska's Kenai Peninsula in the 1940s by the deadly onslaught of what the Tlingit people referred to as the Nantinak. These and other cryptids have become so ingrained in our own literature that they almost, along with the likes of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland, or the Sasquatch and Bigfoot from all corners of North America, they're almost accepted as being part and parcel of the fabric of our respective societies. But did you know that there are others out there? Many others. And many of them hardly get a look in or a mention. So today, we're going to be looking at 3 cryptids that many of you may not have heard of. But before we get into this week's tale, I'd like to take this moment to ask you, if you haven't already, to please do subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button and reinforce your support by ringing that notifications bell so that you'll be updated as and when new content is uploaded by yours truly. Now, as is customary, I'd like to shout out this week especially to new subscribers Lily Hernandez, Corey Reese, Matt Finn and Don Looking Forward. Now, I've decided also to create this video based on the results of a poll that I recently posted to the community tab on the channel here. Now, I'm not tremendously savvy on social media, but I'm always looking for ways to interact with you guys and ladies, the viewers and subscribers of the channel. So please do, in the future, always watch out for questions and possible polls that I'm going to be posting down in the community tab of the channel here. But without further ado, and for all of you cryptid fans out there, here's the lowdown on 3 cryptids that many of you may not know about. This is the start of what I may be calling the cryptid hot list here on the flip side. Now, the state of Louisiana is represented in a couple of the 3 stories that I'm going to be presenting this evening, where particular cryptids have been encountered. Starting off with what has been called as the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Sightings of this almost Bigfoot-looking cryptid started back in 1963, after an encounter with the entity by 2 hunters. Humanoid in appearance, the one big difference between this and other Bigfoot species is the fact that this particular cryptid only has 3 toes. But these 3 toes are evenly spaced out, and it almost appears as if they have webbed feet, so there's like skin going between the 3 main toes. Now, footprints seen and casts taken of its track clearly show what could be a physiological adaptation to the environment in which it is said to roam. Now, as an air traffic controller working out of New Orleans, a man by the name of Harlan Ford would regularly fly over the swamps of southern Louisiana when he wasn't at work. As with most people in the area, he was an avid hunter, and he would use his own light aircraft as a way to look for isolated and potentially new hunting grounds in the vast expanse of swamps in that area. Now, it was during one particular flight over the area in 1963, and along with a good friend of his, a guy by the name of Billy Mills, the 2 men noted what seemed to be an abandoned cabin in the midst of what was a 250-acre swamp known as the Honey Island Swamp. After long deliberation about who could be living in such an isolated area, the friends decided to trek into the area to check it out. Now, if nothing more, the trek would allow the hunters to increase their own personal knowledge of the immediate area, and secondly, it would also go to satisfy their own curiosity. With all the gear preparations made and gear tested and retested, the hunters set out. Now, if any of you had been into the swamps of Louisiana, you'd know just how challenging they can be. Apart from the absolute maze of waterways where it can be frighteningly easy to get lost, there are the added dangers of gators, snakes and other critters. Mosquitoes, the size of dragonflies for example. But making good progress, Harlan and Billy estimated they were about 2/3 of the way into the journey when they came to a clearing, and without any audible indications leading up to the encounter, they just froze in their tracks. Just off to their right, and by a distance of about 70 metres or so, the friends saw what they initially thought was a bear, given that the creature was foraging on all fours. Now, on seeing the creature, Billy turned to Harlan and asked in a normal voice, while pointing towards the creature, "What the hell is that?" Now, on hearing the men, what they had originally thought was a bear turned to face them, and then it stood upright on its rear legs. Looking at the hunters with as much curiosity as they were looking at it, the gaze was locked for about 10 seconds before the creature bounded off in the direction away from the hunters into the swamp. Now, Harlan and Billy took off after the creature, hoping to get a second glance, but all they found were its tracks. In a subsequent interview, Harlan recounted, "It was nothing like I'd ever seen before. It was ugly and sinister, and it looked like something out of a horror movie." Further sightings continued. A fishing and wildlife guide who wants to remain anonymous was travelling down a bayou in a small boat when it struck something in the water. Now, the guide stopped the motor and lifted it in order to see what it was that he'd hit, thinking that he'd see a log or something, only to see a bear-like creature swim towards the shore. And it was upon reaching the shore that the creature climbed out on all fours, but then rose up and stood on two legs. And without turning around to look at what had hit it or what it had hit, it set off into the woods walking on two legs as any hominid would. Now, a year later, Ford and Mills returned to the area on a duck hunting trip, and along the way the two hunters found several dead boars or wild pigs with their throats torn out. Realising that the pigs were too far away from the water to have been killed by alligators, they began to suspect that the monster that they'd seen 9 years before was involved. Now, this suspicion was confirmed when they noticed footprints around one particularly large wild pig that had fallen victim in the same way. The same kind of footprints that they'd seen back in '63, three-toed and webbed, were all around this slain animal. Now, rather than have a second run-in with the swamp monster, Ford and Mills initially opted to exit the swamp, but after discussions decided to re-enter later that night with the goal of taking some plaster cast models of the footprint. Now, another man named Ted Williams claimed to have seen the creature many times, and he even believes there to be multiple swamp monsters after recounting that he had seen numerous individuals during one particular fishing trip to the area. The wily old hunter is on record as having said in an interview, "I could have killed them, but I didn't need to, because they didn't seem to want to harm me." Thinking that the monsters posed no threat to his presence, Ted often took his boat into the swamp, and on one particular trip in 1976, he was never seen again. Now, it's fair to say with the alligators and snakes, he could have succumbed to those, or even gotten into difficulties and capsized his boat and drowned. But that said, it's an interesting question to raise if the creature was in fact capable of assessing threat and reacting accordingly. I mean, on the first encounter with Ford and Wills in 1963, the creature was said to have locked eyes with the pair before making off. Could it be that it was assessing the threat posed by the two hunters and ultimately opted not to confront the two, and instead it took off into the swamp? Now, if you fast forward a number of years, and given that Williams was solo and posed much less of a threat to the animal, could it have been that the monster opted instead to tackle this solo hunter? Furthermore, here's another question. If Ford or Wills had actually been solo back in 1963, when they first came across the creature for the first time, would they have lived to tell the tale? Something to think about, huh? Now, by all accounts, the creature is said to stand around 7.5 feet tall. It's quite an imposing entity, and weighing in between 400 and 500 pounds. Now, this monster, the Honey Island Swamp Monster, is also known as the Louisiana Wookiee, and it's said to be covered in a thick coat of matted grey or brown hair, and possibly also use swamp weed as camouflage, much like a sniper would use a ghillie suit. Now, with reptilian eyes, it is thought it hunts a wide range of swamp critters, from gators, snakes, possums and raccoons. Now, one characteristic that it does have enables it to blend seamlessly into the surroundings is its smell. And it's something offered by Williams prior to his departure, that the creature had the stench of death about it. Now, this primitive creature has, over the years, been blamed for the untimely deaths of livestock and the mysterious disappearance of children from the surrounding areas. Now, one of the strangest legends surrounding the Honey Island swamp monster revolves around a train wreck which allegedly occurred near the Pearl River in the early part of the 20th century. According to this legend, the train was full of exotic animals from a mysterious travelling circus, and all of the animals, once the train had wrecked, fled into the swamps. While most of the creatures would have soon perished in the harsh swamp, the legend goes on to say that a troop of chimpanzees managed to survive in isolation. Could the creature, as encountered by Harlan, Billy and Ted, have indeed been the result of what has survived to this day as a result of that fateful accident? Now, if it is, they certainly have, and against all odds, lived long and prospered. Now, in Michigan folklore, the Michigan Dogman was allegedly first witnessed in 1887 in Wexford County, Michigan. The creature is described as a 7-foot-tall, blue or amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like animal with the torso of a man but the head of a dog. This fearsome entity is also said to possess a fearsome howl that sounds more like a blood-curdling human scream. According to legend, the Michigan Dogman appears in a 10-year cycle that falls on years ending in 7. So plan your adventures of 2027 with caution, folks. Sightings have been reported in several locations throughout Michigan, primarily in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. Now, in 1987, the legend of the Michigan Dogman gained popularity when local disc jockey Steve Cook at WTCM FM recorded a song about the creature and its reported sightings. Now, this creature has remained pretty much well hidden to most of the modern world until, that is, very late in the 20th century. However, it is said to have been stalking the area around the Manistee River since the days when the Odawa tribes lived in that region. Authentic sources for sightings made prior to 1987, however, have never been documented beyond Steve Cook's song. And what is thought to be one of the first alleged encounters with the Dogman occurred in 1887 in Wexford County, when 2 lumberjacks saw a creature which they described as having a man's body but a dog's head. In 1937, in Paris, Michigan, Robert Fortney was attacked by 5 wild dogs, and he said that one of the 5 walked on 2 legs. Reports of similar creatures also came from Allegan County in the 1950s, and in Manistee and Cross Village in 1967. Linda S. Godfrey, in her book, The Beast of Bray Road, compares the Manistee sightings to a similar creature sighted in Wisconsin, known as the Beast of Bray Road. Now, in 1987, disc jockey Steve Cook at WTCM FM in Traverse City, Michigan, recorded a song titled The Legend. And this song was recorded, and he initially played it as an April Fool's joke. He based the song on myths and legends from around North America, and had never heard of an actual Michigan Dogman at the time of the recording. I made it up completely from my own imagination as an April Fool's prank for the radio, and stumbled my way to a legend that goes all the way back to Native American times, he said. Now, Cook maintains his scepticism about the possibility of a real Dogman, but he did have this to say about the matter. I'm tremendously sceptical as a person because I've sort of seen the way folklore becomes built from the creation of this song to what it's turned into. But I do believe people who think they saw something really did see something. I also think the Dogman provides them with an avenue to explain what they maybe couldn't explain for themselves. Now, Cook recorded the song with a keyboard backing and credited that to Bob Farley. After he played the song, Cook received calls from listeners who said they had also encountered a similar creature. Now, in the weeks after Cook first played the song, it was the most requested song on the station. He also sold cassettes of the song for $4 and donated proceeds from the single to an animal shelter. Now, over the years, Cook has received more than 100 reports of the creature's existence. In January of 2017, the creature was actually also featured in Season 2 episode of The Great Lakes. Now, other references to Dogman include various YouTube channels including Dogman Encounters Radio and Dogman Narratives. Now, Cook later added verses to the song in 1997 after hearing a report of an animal break-in by an unknown canine at a cabin in Luther, Michigan. He re-recorded it again in 2007, but this time with a mandolin backing. Heading back to Louisiana for our third story, I guess the sanctity offered by the bayous of the deep southwest count for something. A legendary creature said to inhabit the mosquito-infested swamps and waterways of the region is known as the Rougarou. Now, this name is given within communities of French influence, and it is linked to traditional concepts of the werewolf. It is thought the name stems from evolution of two words from the French language, loup, meaning wolf, which later evolved into roux, and garou describes a man which turns into an animal and remained the same. So Rougarou basically is a person who turns into a wolf-like animal. Stories of encounters with the creature known as Rougarou are as diverse as the spelling of its name, given that there are regional variations of the spelling throughout the areas of Louisiana. There are also a couple of areas where the original and intact French term loup-garou is still used to describe this mystical entity. The Rougarou legend has been spread for many generations, either directly from French settlers to Louisiana, from New France, or via the French-Canadian immigrants many centuries ago. According to Cajun legend, the creature is said to prowl the swamps around Acadiana and Greater New Orleans, as well as the sugarcane fields and woodlands of the regions. The Rougarou most often is described as a creature with a human body and the head of a wolf or dog, similar in the werewolf legends. Now, often the storytelling has been used to inspire fear and obedience. One such example is stories that have been told by elders to persuade Cajun children to behave. Now, according to another variation, the werewolf-like beast will hunt down and kill Catholics who do not follow the rules of Lent. This coincides with the French Catholic loup-garou stories, according to which the method for turning into a werewolf is to break Lent 7 years in a row. Now, a common blood-sucking legend says that the Rougarou is under spell for 101 days. After that time, the curse is transferred from person to person when the Rougarou draws another human's blood. During that time, the creature returns to a human form. Although acting sickly, the human refrains from telling others of its situation through fear of being killed. Now, other stories range from the Rougarou as manifesting itself in the form of a rabbit, to it also being linked to witchcraft. Now, in the latter claim, only a witch can transform a human into a Rougarou, either by becoming a werewolf herself or by cursing others with a specific style of witchcraft known as lycanthropy. Now, you can imagine the setting. The full moon hangs high over the Louisiana swampland. The bright lights of stars flicker in the murky licks of the waves near the towering and ominous cypress trees. Frogs croak their songs in the distance, and mosquitoes buzz as they fly around looking for their next meal. There's a howl in the near distance. It sounds like a wolf, but something is a little bit off. Standing on two legs on top of a fallen moss-covered tree is a large, snarling beast. It throws back its head, letting out a blood-curdling howl to the moon. That's no werewolf though. That's what people in Louisiana call the Rougarou. When travelling down the interstate or the back roads in Louisiana, you'll see lots of beautiful scenery. Remnants of history freckle the map, whether it's old and potentially haunted buildings, abandoned theme parks, or even museums with some very strange collections. Back in the thick fog-covered swamplands is where you'll find the true beauty of Louisiana, and perhaps even a monster or two. Did your house get ransacked during the night? Must have been the Rougarou. Did your child disappear from the village without a trace? Definitely a Rougarou. Personally, I've never heard about anything strange for me to turn around and say, yep, that's the work of a werewolf. But there you have it. Now, this was one interesting problem that they had to deal with centuries ago. Now, villagers would capture people they believed to be a loup-garou and then hold a public trial. Usually they'd find someone in the woods or someone in the village who was just acting strange, and then they would subsequently be labelled a loup-garou. Now, these kangaroo courts would ask the public if they believed the accused person to be a werewolf or not, and usually the public agreed, and this was mainly through fear that they'd be outed as a witch or a loup-garou themselves if they went against the court. Now, these loup-garous became a fear for many people in the country, earning their place in legends which were subsequently passed down to the children. Now, when many of the French migrated to Canada and the southern United States, they took the legend of the loup-garou with them. And since the migration, many of the legends began to change to match the times and the dialect. Since Cajun dialect is a dialect which is a mixture of French and English, and well known for changing words completely to roll off the tongue easier, the name of the beast changed to suit the phonetics of specific locations and accents. In the swamps within the greater New Orleans area and their Acadiana is where this beast has come to live. He may even be neighbours with the Honey Island swamp monster that we mentioned earlier on, which is also known as Louisiana's Bigfoot of the swamp. So there you have it, folks, 3 cryptids. I'm hoping some of that was new for some of you, maybe all of you, who knows. But please do, if you liked the video, give it a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell so that you'll be updated as and when new content is available from yours truly. And as I mentioned at the beginning, please also from time to time come and check the little community tab in case I do post a poll or a question that may direct me to a future content creation. And also, as has been requested in the past, please mention in the comments if you have a particular story that you'd like me to look up and create as content sometime down the road. But without further ado, I will let you get on. Please stay safe, stay well, and above all, stay healthy. And we will meet again, hopefully sometime very soon, here on the flip side.